Hate speech offender and president of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, is under fire lately. Just as we wait to hear what his punishment from the court will be, well, Afriforum is turning up the heat. They are on a mission to cancel him and get him sanctioned on the global stage. In this video, I'm going to show you what this is about, and then we're going to go into something that I think you'll find extremely interesting for where our country is going. And if you stay with me until the biblical reaction, I think you and I are going to do something extremely important because South Africa will prosper. Ready? Okay, let's go as soon as you've pressed like. Let's hear what Afriforum is up to.
The campaign against the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer chant on Afriforum's behalf would then give you more information regarding a dossier, the Malema Dossier, that we would be using. I'll give you more information in that regard. We have now gone into a new phase where we're going to fight Kill the Boer internationally and not just locally. The Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer chant is a violent call for the murder of Afrikaners and the murder of farmers. There can be no doubt about that. Those trying to downplay that are either ignorant or they have a political agenda to try and downplay the scourge of farm murders and trying to justify their own racism towards Afrikaners and farmers. So for us, that can never be justified, and we will continue fighting this. We can never accept anybody chanting, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. We will fight it on all fronts, and now internationally. Why is it so important also to us? It's totally irresponsible in a violent country where we have a huge murder rate, and farm murders are a reality, and we're seeing terrible tortures in those attacks. It's irresponsible to have these kind of chants. It polarizes our community. It infringes on the dignity of people. If other people are allowed to say they should be killed. And of course, it makes many people feel unwelcome in the country of their birth. And I want to state this. I have children. And for somebody now coming to try and justify the fact that somebody can chant that my children should be killed, that cannot be justified. And that is why we are taking this on. We fought this for many years, over a decade, in the South African courts, thinking that the South African Constitution would protect us. That has not happened. And in effect, the Constitutional Court has legalized that somebody can chant somebody else should be killed on an ethnic basis. President Ramaphosa, and maybe I want to say more about that, in March this year, Afriforum wrote a letter to the president as head of state, saying to him, this is terrible that the court has legalized this, but in the interest of harmony in the country, we ask you to condemn the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer chant in the strongest possible terms. He refused to do that. He, in fact, tried to defend this chant, and we got no response. Our letter, we didn't even get a recognition of that the letter was sent. That is the problem. If the president is not willing to take this on, then we're going to take this internationally. And I think the time is right to fight this chant internationally. We've already seen the UK denying a visa to Julius Malema because he is a divisive figure that makes himself guilty of hate speech. So there is already an appetite shown in the international community. We also have in the US what they call the Magnitsky Act that allows the US to take targeted sanctions against individuals that violates human rights, that are guilty of serious corruption, and those that support terror organizations. And Julius Malema ticks all these three boxes in that regard. Afriforum is sending a representative to the US at the end of the month It's one of our board members, Werner Riemann, that would be going to Washington to hand over the Malema Dossier to ask for punitive action against Julius Malema. My colleague Ernst van Zyl will be going to Europe at the end of the year, where we're also going to ask European countries to act. We're also going to go to the UN Forum for Minority Issues in Geneva, where we are also going to promote this. And then, of course, locally, there are many embassies. So we are going to visit a number of embassies locally, asking directly for punitive measures against Julius Malema. And I must say, this is not the only person we're going to ask these punitive measures against. It's only the first person with our dossier that Ernst will give more information about. But we know that there are many other politicians that are corrupt, that are very negative, acting very negatively towards minority communities, abusing human rights. And we are also busy drawing up dossiers against them. But that is not our focus now. We will make announcements in due course when those dossiers are available.
Wow, so they're going after Julius and more are to come. Let's take a quick look at this dossier. So this is the dossier, Malema Dossier, request to the international community to punish Julius Malema for human rights violations and corruption and for supporting terrorist organizations. That's SAI and Afriforum, Southern African Agricultural Institute, I believe. Number 1, for the kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Number 2, we are not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now. A revolutionary must become a cold killing machine motivated by pure hate. And honeymoon is over for white people in South Africa. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. We are cutting the throat of whiteness, talking about Ethel Trollip. The only white man you can trust is a dead white man. I think Robert Mugabe said that, and then he tweeted that. We will remove this government through the barrel of a gun. That's in 2016. When you see a beautiful piece of land, you like it, occupy it. It belongs to you. They say you organize farm murders. His response on X was, maybe, maybe not. And there was, I'll kill you outside this meeting. I will kill you. This was at the Pan-Africanist Parliament. Now, number 2, they're going after his anti-West statements and support for terror organizations. There was him criticizing NATO as a bloodthirsty imperialist war alliance. The US has played a rather destructive role in world politics. And he was cursing foreign aid, fighting for the base of the US to be removed on the African continent. Europe, go to hell with your money. If a racist country like Australia says the white farmers are being killed in South Africa, we are not killing them. Now Australia says Malema EFF want to kill white farmers. They must come to Australia. So they're showing the international community what he's been on about. And he had a meeting with Hamas leadership, and he says the EFF was given a first-hand account of the gruesome conditions confronting the Palestinian people at the hands of the racist, Zionist, and apartheid Israel and its allies, namely the United States of America. There's nothing wrong with what Hamas did. When you are oppressed, the only option you have is to fight, and that is what Hamas is doing. When you are oppressed, you only have one option: confront the enemy and shoot to kill. The third part is the corruption part. A big tender to build roads through On Point and there were 2 counts of racketeering, 5 counts of corruption, 4 counts of fraud, and 40 counts of Prevention of Organized Crime Act. But you know what the second one will be. It is the Vendor Building Society. How VBS was looted. They suggest links to the Magnitsky Act. The Magnitsky Act was actually passed by President Barack Obama as a way to sanction people who do so much corruption or human rights violations that you start to undermine democratic institutions. So this is where we are. I know that I've seen many who are saying, what's up with this kill the Boer thing? This time is up. In fact, many ANC people have long said this song is no longer relevant, but they will not, as a president, say, please stop, because that would change a lot, because at least there will be leadership. But unfortunately, Afriforum is now taking a piece of the leadership that should be coming from the president. So Afriforum is playing quite an important political role, even though they are not a political party. So if you look at my lines there, think of the center as 0, and if you go extreme to the right, it goes to +10. Here's where we are in South Africa. The line from left to right signifies economic control. So on the right, we have the state controlling the economy. On the left, we have the state staying away so that individuals get to make their own business decisions. Now, when we go top to bottom, at the top, we have the government controlling individuals, and at the bottom we have liberal, which means the government letting individuals have their freedom. So those are the extremes on all sides. This is where, first of all, our constitution is below the line, meaning it recognizes an individual more than it recognizes groups. As far as controlling individuals, it's at like about -3. As far as full freedom to do business or wants to control business, it's centrist. It's at about 0. So let's go back to our all so famous history. If you go to the National Party in white SA, in white South Africa, the National Party was right up there. So did individuals have freedom? No, the state was huge, was in charge, it controlled things. So it's right up there like 8 or 9, okay? Meaning it's as authoritarian as it can be. The state was the boss. But when you go to free markets, this is in white SA for a white South African. You'll realize it was as free as possible, such that you could do whatever you want, but you'll have to know that the state is really controlling. So it was state capitalism with Eskom, Sasol, all of those companies. But it was pretty free, and so people made bucket loads of money. If you were white in white SA and you applied yourself, it was much easier to get very wealthy. Now, you literally have 2 national parties, right? Because you've got the one for whites, and then you've got the same one, but think of it differently, for blacks. So that's where roundabout it's at in terms of it's above the line, so it thinks in terms of groups, and it's to the left, meaning it wanted to control, meaning a black guy couldn't just go to Windsor or Cape Town and open a business and make money there, because it had to be controlled by the state. So you had them, as far as being authoritarians concerned, very right up top there. So now you've still got the National Party for blacks in black South Africa, which means it would look like how it is for whites in white South Africa. Hence we had so many millionaires, because that would be that one over there if you black in black South Africa. In terms of freedom of markets, it was as good as Singapore is today. Right, so let's look at the National Party for blacks in white South Africa. That's where it was. State wanted to control your business activities. The state wanted to control you as an individual because they didn't think you were an individual. They thought of you through your group. You were black. So let's look at where South Africa is right now. If you actually check, the EFF is right there. They want the land to completely be in the hands and controlled by the state, and you get to lease it from the state. They want to nationalize the banks, the mines. So meaning if I as an individual came up with an amazing banking app, if we were completely under the EFF, well, there we go. I will have to go through the government for my banking app to ever work. So if I'm not connected, it's not going to happen. If I'm saying the wrong things, which I am, there we go. My app would go nowhere. So literally the EFF from the social economic spectrum sits almost exactly where the apartheid government for blacks sat. And someone says, oh yeah, but they're fighting for blacks. If you black and you create that app and you're not close to EFF and they happen to have 51%, well, your app is going nowhere because it's gotta go through the EFF. Same position, just slightly less authoritarian. What you get next, roundabout there, is the MK party. They don't see individuals, they only see blacks and whites. So they're pretty close to the apartheid government for black people back then. They're around about there. At the same time, the MK is not so clear on their philosophy, except that their philosophy is Jacob Zuma and their philosophy is to get rid of Ramaphosa, and they're very populist, but they don't like the constitution and they happen to have quite a strong streak of nationalism. But they even want to get rid of the constitution and have a parliamentary democracy, which is exactly how the apartheid state was able to do all the atrocities. Okay, then we come here. More reasonable, you have the ANC. So as far as the market is concerned, they still want the state to control the market, hence BE, EE, and all that stuff. They don't want you to be free to hire who you want to hire, to have the partners you want to have. They want to control who and where and what, and they'll punish you if you don't listen. So there's a bit of an authoritarian streak, but they're a broad church and believe very strongly in corrupt redistribution of wealth. Okay, then you have the IFP right there. So the IFP, not so authoritarian. They don't really want the state to control, but they're slightly market friendly. I could put them on both sides of this line, and I'm probably right. And forgive me for all of them because I can't really place them completely because political parties change. Sometimes they compromise, but looking at what they say in their founding documents, I'd put the IFP somewhere around, maybe even on the line, maybe on the other side, because they're slightly market friendly, but they're not really strongly saying give people their business freedom. And because they're a Zulu party, they slightly get to be but they're not way up. So they're a centrist party. Then now we come to the DA. It's interesting in South Africa that people don't think about this because all they can think is black and white. Why? Because they are like their father Verwoerd or Zuma or Malema or Ramaphosa. People don't tend to think about their politics, but only think about are they black or white. So the DA sits closest to our constitution in terms of what they stand for. So you'll see if that line is going from 0 to 10, they're at about +3 in terms of free markets. They are pro-business, but not strongly pro-business. But they're pro-business. Okay, then they will never make the mistake of crossing the line to the left and being pro-state control of business. They will rather business is free. And in terms of that line, the DA gets in trouble quite a lot because many people say, but you're not growing because you're not playing the group thing, and they just refuse to play. And the big fight between many people and the DA is, but why don't you just put a black face? And they say there are no groups. We are non-racial. We will not take an action that crosses the line that we are taking the action, because if the individual is good, they will end up being president. We've got our tests, we've got our systems, and when the first person passes that test, they will be leader of the party, whatever skin color they are. So DA won't play those games of skin color because they are below the line. Now, where does Afriforum sit here? Afriforum is not a political party, but for the sake of this exercise, we can look at where they sit. Round about there. They're below the group line, although they tend to be linked quite strongly with Afrikaners, but they fight for an individual. They're more for free markets, and of course, they're not politicians, so it doesn't serve them to fight for state control of the economy. Now, I can't get this perfectly, but it helps to look at it. And Freedom Front sits round about there, but they slightly more, they cross the line to the authoritarian side in terms of law and order, and government must come down hard and make things happen. You remember just lately the Freedom Front Minister of Prisons was trying to see if he can slap people across the face if it will save money, right? Because they crossed that line to go across. And I'm sure when he came up with that idea, the DA, who is below that line, said, "Are you crazy?" And of course, the ANC, MK, and EFF, all they thought was, is the person who's going to be slapping them black or white, and will they be slapping a black or white prisoner? And I mean, of course, if you said he's asking for white cops to slap black prisoners, they would say, "You are racist." And if you said we're asking for black cops to slap white prisoners, Juju would say, that sounds like it could save us money. While, of course, the liberals are thinking, slap someone? Are you crazy? And of course, our constitution was also saying, nigga, is you out of your mind? You're not going to beat anyone up physically. And the ACDP is, I suspect the ACDP is slightly less for free markets, but they're right there. If there is a decision to be made, the ACDP will be pro-business and entrepreneurship and small business. So there we go. So that's where they sit. What do we need in South Africa? If you forget the National Party, you'll realize that you have the DA as the only party over 20%. Then you have the Freedom Front and ACDP, who have very, very little. And then you have many of the smaller parties which tend to be around the center there, but in their heart go with the ANC more than free markets. So they like state control, they justify it, they make excuses for it. But because they have small votes, I've left them out. Do you realize how heavily left-weighted our politics are? All the weight of our politics is saying the state must control everyone, not decentralize, take charge of everything. Individuals don't matter, and the state must control the economy. It's up to them to come up with brilliant ideas. And in my opinion, we need a party right here that fights more aggressive than the DA for free markets, stands more aggressive than the DA for individual freedoms. That would balance our politics and move us in a direction of prosperity. You need people who will say freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Unban the old flag. And it's not sitting at +10, which means government do nothing, but at least just let individuals have the ability to do free markets, and rather the government must pay motivational speakers so that people are inspired. And we need a president who, when you listen to their speech, you feel inspired to wake up and make things happen. So a party right there would probably need to stand for these things: free enterprise and entrepreneurship. Stop thinking big business and think more, how do we make sure that every single one of our talented people ends up building the South African social media that ends up competing against Google and YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. What does that young boy in a shack right now reading programming on his phone on the last piece of data? What do we need to do that he ends up building the next Google? And not he must go to an office and get funding. We need to make sure that nothing he tries to do, he ever gets stopped. Of course, strong rule of law and clean government. Non-racial though, not a black party, but to be black-led only because of the impact it would have on voters, because we have been miseducated by Verwoerd, Zuma, Ramaphosa, and Malema. So to offset their bad education, many people were hoping Action SA would go into this role. Very disappointing, and fight very strong. Say, I need a state that's small enough to execute rule of law pretty much and just manage infrastructure development. But we don't need a big state trying to run everything, because things must be given down to individuals. Decentralize and not have a big state trying to run everything. Send some power down, right down to local. Open trade and economic growth focus. Just leave me alone. You don't know what I need. If I do entrepreneurship, the one thing I need is some politician deciding who I must do it with. Back off. Especially because you dumb politician that's busy telling me I must hate the West. You tell me that on YouTube, and then you repeat your message on American citizen-owned X, and then you repeat your message on your Android Google run cell phone. So how about you just back off? See, we need a party that's saying this, that's just free trade and focusing on economic growth, saying we need to grow at 10% per annum. Someone who fights for prosperity-driven transformation and say we need to distribute prosperity rather than redistribute poverty. I believe this is what we need. It can happen a couple of ways. Then our country would balance and South Africa would prosper. Wow, where could we get such a party? My biblical reaction. Here's the thing in James 4. You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and kick and scream and shout, and you cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. Sometimes we don't have something, and come to think about it, we've only complained, cried, screamed, got frustrated, but forgot to ask. So here's what I propose. I now declare before heaven and earth that this video is a request for that party with minimum 20%. See, now that's a request. And if you'll agree with me, then there we go. Our agreement is asking. We are asking for that party that we need. Either an existing party will move and take that space, or that party will appear. But that is the party we are asking for to balance our politics so we can go to prosperity. How about you go to the chat, and if you agree with me, then there we go. Request confirmed and ratified. I say to you, whatever things you ask, when you pray, we are praying on this video. Someone says, close your eyes and do a whole religious thing. What, you think God can't watch the video and know what I'm saying and what I mean? Of course, this is a prayer. With your agreement in the comment, well, believe that you receive them and you will have them. So how about, as you comment, believe that we receive that party which we need, and guess what? We will have it. And South Africa will prosper. No man can serve two masters, because either he's going to love the one and hate the other, or he's going to despise the one and honor the other. You cannot serve God and Karl Marx, those people who who want to control everybody and control the market, well, they are Marxists. You cannot serve both, because he says, I don't control markets and I deal with individuals. I call individuals. I gift individuals. I accept prayers from individuals. And they can agree, but it's still individuals agreeing. Let's make history together. Cheers.